God's people are called Zion. In Isaiah 51:16, it says, Zion, thou art my people. God also describes his church as a woman. We can see that in Jeremiah 6:2. I have likened thy daughter of Zion to a comely and delicate woman. And the Bible tells us that before the end of the world, God's people will have a period of time in the wilderness. Revelation 12:6 says, Then the women fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared by God, that they should feed her there for 1,260 days. As Christians, we will have a wilderness experience just as the Israelites had. It is useful to see what happened to see how it will be for the church. The Israelites traveled in the desert for 3 days, and the only water they found was undrinkable. They complained to Moses about their thirst. Moses prayed, and God showed him a tree to put into the water. When Moses did this, the water was made sweet. There God made an agreement with them that if they listened to him, do what's right in God's eyes, follow the commandments and statutes, then they would not get any of the diseases the Egyptians suffered from. The Israelites were wrong to choose not to trust that God would provide them water. They were unwilling to endure difficult times in the desert. When there was a difficulty, they would see them as impossibilities. They would lose confidence in God and they would think that they would die. The Israelites complained to Moses and his brother Aaron about hunger, saying that because they had followed God into the desert, they would die, so they would have been better off staying in Egypt than dying of hunger in the desert. But they had not really suffered hunger. They had food for the present, but they feared for the future. They couldn't see how the Israelites could survive on the simple food they had. God was happy for them to only have enough food to last for the immediate future, and that there would be difficulties in the desert, so that they would turn to God and ask Him for help. If they asked Him for help, He would have showed them His love and care. However, they seemed to be unwilling to trust God more than what was already given to them. If they had true faith and confidence in Him, they would have been happy with any difficulties and suffering. God had promised that if they followed Him, He would protect them from disease, so it was wrong for them to think that they might starve and die. This is a lesson for our day. The unbelief and the complaining of the Israelites illustrates how Christians are today. We sometimes look at the Israelites in the desert and are surprised at the lack of belief and continual complaining, after God had done so much for them, showing so much evidence like parting the sea, for example. We think that they shouldn't have been so ungrateful, but sometimes we complain of things much less important, and God frequently proves us and tries our faith in small things, and we don't endure the trial any better than the Israelites did. Many have their present needs supplied, but they won't trust God for the future. Their unbelief causes them to have no hope and feel depressed. When difficulties arise and their faith and love to God are tested, they don't endure the trial and complain at the process by which God has chosen to purify them. Their love does not prove pure and perfect to bear all things. Christians' faith should be strong, active, and enduring, the result of having faith in things hoped for. If this is the case, then people would instead say things like, Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless His holy name, for He has been generous with me. Some people think that self-denial is suffering. They do and eat whatever they want to. If Christians agreed to deny themselves from the things that they shouldn't be doing, many of them would give up their faith, as if living correctly would somehow cause them to die, and simple appetites would cause them to starve. Like the Israelites, they would prefer slavery, diseased bodies, and even death, rather than to be deprived of worldly amusement and food. The purpose of life isn't to make yourself as happy as possible. Follow God, and He cares more than enough for you to look after you. God only promises bread and water when Christians go through the time of trouble at the end of the world. In the morning, the Israelites found small round things on the ground. Moses told them it was bread from God and everyone should collect and eat it. However, much people collected and found out it was exactly the amount they and their families needed. Moses told them not to keep any for the next day. People should collect what they need for the day on the day. A lot of people didn't listen to Moses and stored the food, but the next morning they would find it rotten and covered in worms. This taught the Israelites to trust in God's provision. Also, bread represents Jesus, and we are to receive food from God every day. We can't rely on yesterday's relationship with God to be sufficient for today. On Fridays, they collected twice as much food and baked what they wanted to eat the next day, because Saturday is the Sabbath. The fact that the food wasn't rotten on the Sabbath morning showed the Israelites how special and holy the Sabbath is. The Israelites were ashamed of their unbelief and complaining, and promised to trust the Lord, but they soon forgot their promise and failed on the first trial of their faith. They came to an area without water and told Moses off and ordered him to give them water. They were annoyed with Moses again, that without water they would die. Moses cried to God about the Israelites' unbelief. God told Moses to go to a rock and hit it with his stick, the same one he used to part the Red Sea. When Moses hit the rock, God made water come out. The rock represents Jesus, and the hitting of the rock is the death that Jesus did to save us. God chose to put the Israelites in an area without water to test whether they would ask for help or again complain. God had deliberately showed them his power so that they would understand he gave them everything they have and could take it all away. At times, the Israelites accepted this and were humble, thanking and asking God for help. But when they were hungry or thirsty, they complained to Moses as if they had come to the desert for him, and it was his fault they were thirsty. Because of their unbelief, God allowed their enemies to make war with them, so that he could show them that God is the one who provides them their strength. Esau had a grandson called Amalek, who was the leader of a tribe. He discovered and fought with the Israelites in the desert. Moses told one of his assistants, Joshua, to take a group of men to fight with Amalek. Moses, Hur, and Moses' brother Aaron went up a hill to watch the battle. Moses held up the rod of God, and when he did, Joshua and the other Israelites started winning the fight. But when Moses let his hands come down, the Amalekites started winning. Aaron and Hur helped Moses keep his arms up the whole day, signifying that if Israel trusted in God, he would fight for them and remove their enemies. But when they didn't ask for his strength, their enemies who didn't know God would be stronger than them. So being a Christian and having your trust in God makes you more powerful than your enemies. But being a Christian and not asking for God's power makes you weaker than if you didn't know God in the first place. As a Christian, Satan wants to attack you, and you will lose your faith without asking God for help.